The bus suddenly braked, but what truly froze the air was the accusation. "Get out of here, illegal. People like you only dirty this country." All eyes turned to the woman sitting in the middle seat. Brown skin, hair tied up hastily, a firm leather folder pressed against her chest. She didn't lower her head. The silence of the other passengers was almost as violent as the insult. The aggressor moved closer, confident that she would have no defense. He had no idea who he was attacking. The bus line 66, which was heading down Massachusetts Avenue towards Harvard Square, had braked abruptly due to the heavy morning traffic. People stumbled, some cursed. But what truly broke the routine was the harsh voice of a man at the back of the vehicle. "Get out of here, illegal. People like you only dirty this country." Silence fell immediately. All gazes turned to the woman sitting in the middle seat near the window. Her name was Camila Ortega, 32 years old, a law graduate from Boston University, daughter of Mexican immigrants who had settled in El Paso before she was born. Brown skin, hair hastily tied up, a wrinkled light blue dress shirt after hours of work. In her lap, a leather folder she held as if it were a shield. She didn't lower her head. The aggressor, a man in his early 40s, tall, wearing an open checkered shirt over a white t-shirt, stepped forward in the narrow aisle. His tone became even more hostile. "I know exactly what kind of person you are. You come here, steal jobs, fill the bus speaking Spanish. If I could, I would have deported all of you already." The driver quickly glanced at the rearview mirror, but said nothing. An elderly woman in the seat in front pretended to rummage through her purse. A young man with headphones lowered his gaze. The silence of the passengers was almost as violent as the insult. Camila took a deep breath. She was used to this kind of attack, but it always hurt. It wasn't just the public humiliation. It was the reminder that, to many, her skin and accent would never be enough to prove she belonged in this country. She slowly lifted her gaze, locking eyes with the aggressor. He smiled with contempt, confident that he had control of the situation. "Are you going to stay silent? Of course you can't even respond without giving yourself away." His laugh echoed through the bus. A blonde girl in the back let out a nervous giggle. The young man with the headphones, however, made a quick move. He took his phone out of his pocket and, unnoticed, started recording. The camera captured the man standing in the aisle and Camila motionless, dignified, holding her folder. Camila felt her heart race. The natural impulse was to retaliate, but she held herself back. She knew that in situations like this, every word could be twisted. She simply ran her thumb along the edge of the folder, as if caressing the worn leather. Inside, along with client reports, were her green card and the Massachusetts Bar Association membership card, documents that defined her not just as a legal citizen, but as a respected professional. The bus moved slowly, passing the corner of Prospect Street. The aggressor didn't stop. "You think you're fooling anyone? I know that accent. I bet you can't even speak English properly. You're taking a spot that should belong to a real American." An elderly man sitting 2 seats ahead cleared his throat, clearly bothered, but didn't speak up. Camila maintained her posture, her eyes fixed on the window, as if she hadn't heard. Inside, however, she felt her indignation boil. The young man with the phone adjusted the camera for a better angle. He was recording everything: the insults, the laughter, the complicit silence. Camila still didn't know someone was capturing the scene, but fate was beginning to align. The bus stopped near Central Square. Some people hurried off, avoiding getting involved. The man remained standing, now closer to her. The smell of alcohol mixed with old coffee filled the air. "Look at you, pretending you don't understand. You must think you're going to get away with it, but I'll make sure you get kicked out of here. I won't share my country with people like you." Camila closed her eyes for a moment, taking a deep breath. She thought of her mother, who worked as a cleaner to pay for her first law books. She thought of her father, who crossed the border with fear and hope, believing that his children would have a different life. She thought of herself, of the sleepless nights studying case law, fighting to prove she was capable. When she opened her eyes, there was no fear in them, only a calculated silence. The bus continued its slow course down Massachusetts Avenue, but inside, time seemed suspended. Everyone waited for her reaction. The next move, the next word. Camila adjusted the folder in her lap, her fingers firmly over the metal clasp. She wouldn't open it yet. Not in that moment. The aggressor believed she had no defense. He had no idea who he was attacking. The next morning, Bus 66 creaked down Massachusetts Avenue again. Camilla got on at Central Square and stood up because the seats were already taken. She didn't see the man at first. For a moment she thought it was over. It lasted 2 stops. "There she is," said the same voice, now closer, laced with sarcasm. "Didn't you get tired of stealing seats?" Some passengers exchanged glances. The driver, wearing a name tag that read Walter, kept his eyes on the road, as if the rearview mirror were dangerous. Camilla gazed out the window, breathed slowly, and felt a shove on her shoulder when the man passed by her, unnecessarily pushing his way through. Pretending not to understand, he repeated, "I bet you don't even have documents." Her phone buzzed in her purse. 2 messages from the office in downtown Boston about an immigration hearing. She typed a short response, her hand steady. As she put the phone away, she saw the young man from the previous day, 2 seats behind. Later she would know his name, Damon Carter. The bus stopped at Prospect Street. The man kept going, pouring out insults. People kept listening, some masking their discomfort with coughs and fidgeting with their bags. A businessman in a suit opened a laptop and pretended to be busy. The same choreography, the insult at the center, the silent audience. Camilla planted her feet on the rubber floor as if anchoring her body. She thought about the afternoon hearing, the words she would carefully choose in front of the judge at Government Center. She remembered her mother in El Paso asking if the big city was safe. She responded with emojis. When the bus crossed Porter Square, the man leaned toward Camilla and spat the phrase like a private threat. "People like you ruin everything. I'm going to expose you." The word expose hit differently. She maintained her posture. The aggressor stretched his arm as if to grab her folder. He didn't touch it. The gesture was enough to ignite the tension. Walter looked in the mirror, hesitated, and kept driving. Damon adjusted his phone, camera on. The focus caught the profile of the aggressor, his clenched fist, the proximity of his face to hers. It also captured hands gripping the metal, eyes avoiding contact. That was already evidence. At the office later, Camilla presented a memo from Chelsea. A colleague, Madison Clark, complimented the text and asked, smiling, "Who helped you with the English terms?" "It's flawless." Camilla smiled briefly. "I did." The comment lingered, polished on the outside. In the elevator, a senior colleague asked if she took calls in Spanish to speed up clients. She replied that she handled cases, not phone calls. The man coughed and said, "Sure, sure," as if realigning his mask. At the end of the workday, Camilla took the 66 again. The late afternoon air carried the smell of rain. As she boarded, she saw Damon sitting at the back. He raised his gaze and approached. "Sorry to intrude. I recorded yesterday and today. If you want, I'll send you the material." Camilla stared at him, surprised. The offer came clean, without morbid curiosity. "Why did you record?" she asked. "Because everyone stayed silent," Damon said, "including me, in that first minute. The video is the least I could do." She nodded, took a card from the pocket of her folder with the name Camila Ortega, attorney at law, and wrote an email on the back. She handed it to Damon in silence. He smiled, relieved, as if he had delivered something he owed. The bus filled up in Harvard Square. In the jostling, Camilla was once again near the aisle. The man appeared suddenly, as if emerging from the city itself. Before she could respond, Damon raised his phone again, and some heads turned. The man noticed the camera and stepped back half a pace, but insisted, "Why are you filming? She shouldn't even be on the bus." Camilla, without changing her tone, replied, "I have a hearing tomorrow morning. If you want to put more words under oath, feel free to continue." Some held their breath. The vehicle moved towards Alston. The rain began, tapping on the roof. When Camilla got off at Commonwealth Avenue, Damon had already sent the videos. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. Subject: recording, 66 Mass Ave, days 1 and 2. She opened the file under a marquee, with the folder protected under her arm. She saw the man's face, the threatening proximity, the narrow aisle. She also saw the silence of others, captured in high definition. She felt something reorganize inside her. There, under the marquee, she decided something direct. She would save the file to the cloud, make copies, and formally report it to the Cambridge police today. Quickly. The rain grew heavier. Camilla put her phone away, tied her hair with an elastic, and walked with firm steps. The city carried on noisily, For the first time since the previous morning, the noise didn't pass through her. Now there was a schedule, a time, and a place. There were names, and there was evidence. On Wednesday morning, bus line 66 departed from Dudley Square towards Harvard. Camilla climbed the metal steps with her folder pressed against her chest. The cold Boston air streamed through the gaps in the door. She settled near the window, exactly in the same seat as on the first day. The vehicle jolted down the avenues. Camilla mentally reviewed a petition she would present that afternoon at the Government Center courthouse, when the familiar voice echoed again. "Unbelievable, back here again. You really don't understand when you're not welcome, do you?" The man in the checkered shirt was standing in the aisle. His gaze had the same arrogance as always, but there was something different. Restlessness. He knew he had been filmed in recent days, but trusted in the collective silence. Camilla took a deep breath. Her face remained calm. The whole bus waited. The aggressor leaned in closer, his breath a mix of coffee and tobacco. "I can call immigration right now. It'll be quick. You and that ridiculous folder will go straight to the airport." It was at that moment that the young man, Damon, sitting 2 rows behind, raised his phone visibly. Everyone saw the red recording light. Camilla then released the metal clasp of the folder. The click echoed in the silence. Calmly, she took out 2 laminated documents, the green card and the Massachusetts Bar Association membership card. She placed them on her lap, visible to everyone. She raised her face, her voice firm and unwavering. "My name is Camilla Ortega. I am a licensed attorney in this state. What is happening here is racial discrimination, a crime under federal law. And now it is recorded on video." The tension exploded. An elderly man who had always pretended to be asleep suddenly opened his eyes. The blonde girl who had laughed earlier covered her mouth. The driver, Walter, diverted his eyes from the rearview mirror. The aggressor stood frozen, speechless. The color of his face changed, from arrogance to an embarrassed flush. Camilla didn't shout, didn't dramatize. She simply raised the documents firmly, keeping them exposed. "This bus is full of witnesses and evidence." Damon brought the camera closer, capturing every detail. The heavy silence, the shame spreading like a contagion. The transformation was complete. The woman everyone expected to lower her head was now standing tall, not just as a passenger, but as a representative of the law. The aggressor tried to stammer. I was just joking." Camilla interrupted him, her voice low but cutting. "Jokes aren't crimes. What you did is." A murmur ran through the seats. Some turned their gaze away. Others shrank back. The atmosphere was one of unspoken judgment. Camilla returned the documents to the folder but didn't close the clasp. She kept her hand on them, signaling that she could expose them again at any moment. Damon lowered his phone, but didn't stop recording. The bus continued, passing over the Massachusetts Avenue Bridge with the Charles River in the background. Inside, no one dared to say anything else. Camilla leaned back in her seat. She knew that this moment didn't erase the pain of the previous days, but it tipped the scale. She was no longer a passive target. Now the ones who needed to explain themselves were the others. The bus glided slowly down Massachusetts Avenue, congested in the early afternoon. The atmosphere inside was one of held breath. Camilla's leather folder remained in her lap, the clasp still open, and the shine of the plastic green card and the Bar Association card reflected under the cold light of the overhead panels. The aggressor, now pale, was trying to compose himself. He opened his mouth twice as if searching for a defense. He found none. The silence was no longer complicity, it was a witness. Camilla straightened her shoulders and without raising her voice spoke clearly so that everyone could hear. Everything that has been said here over the last 3 days is recorded. This recording will be attached to a formal hate crime complaint with the Cambridge Police Department and the Massachusetts Civil Rights Commission. Any further attempt at intimidation will be considered obstruction. The words fell like stones in water. No one dared to take a deep breath. The man stepped back, bumping into a teenager who shrank away. "Wait, no, that's not what I meant," he murmured, his voice trembling. "I was just nervous, just joking." Camilla kept her gaze firm, without a hint of pity. "You repeated the same pattern on different days in front of witnesses. That's not nervousness, that's criminal conduct." Walter, the driver, cleared his throat and adjusted the rearview mirror. Finally, he spoke softly. "Do you need me to stop the bus in front of the police station?" "No need. I already have the material I need. The aggressor raised his hands in a desperate gesture as if trying to negotiate. Please don't involve the police. I have a family, a job. Camilla didn't blink. You should have thought about that before you exposed me to ridicule, thinking no one would do anything. Now, everyone here is implicated as a witness. You will be cited. And those who collaborated with laughter or silence prepare to be called to testify. The young man who had laughed days earlier lowered his head, embarrassed. The blonde girl began to cry discreetly. The elderly man who always pretended to sleep now stared at the floor, his hands trembling. The aggressor tried one last time. I didn't know. I didn't know who you were. Camilla interrupted him, her voice as precise as a sentence. And if I weren't a lawyer, and if I didn't have documents, it would still be a crime. It doesn't matter who I am, it matters what you did. Damon, still holding the phone, was recording every second. The passenger's eyes darted between the lit screen and Camilla's serene face. A murmur ran through the vehicle. It was as if every passenger realized the bus had transformed into a courtroom, and they, involuntary jurors. The aggressor was no longer a confident man, but an exposed defendant, caught in his own venom. Camilla closed the metal clasp of the folder with a firm snap. She put the documents back, crossed her legs, and simply said, "See you in court." The impact was immediate. The man retreated to the back, his hands trembling, his breath uneven. Walter accelerated towards the next stop, as if he wanted to shorten the collective ordeal. No one spoke another word. The bus was immersed in a heavy silence, different from the previous ones. It was not of complicity, but of fear and shame. The lawyer kept her eyes fixed on the window, watching the waters of the Charles reflect the gray light of the sky. Inside, there was no relief or easy victory, only the unshakable certainty that the law, this time, would be her voice. The next morning, Camilla walked to the Cambridge Police Department with her folder and phone. Damon had sent the original files and metadata. Everything was preserved. At the reception, she filed a formal complaint, attached the video from the 3 days, and listed witnesses. Driver Walter, the girl who laughed, the man who pretended to sleep, the executive with the laptop. The clerk registered the complaint, asked for details, and stamped it. In the afternoon, at Government Center, she submitted the representation to the Massachusetts Commission Against Discrimination. The report was surgical. Dates, times of bus 66, boarding and disembarking points, excerpts from speeches, frames from the video. No speeches, just facts. When she left the building, the cold Boston wind called for a jacket. She pressed the folder against her chest and headed to the office. In the following week, the buses remained crowded, but the silence changed its temperature. When Camilla boarded at Harvard Square, eyes followed her with contained respect, almost discordant with the hum of the engine. Walter started opening the door to face the sidewalk and greeted her with a brief nod, as if aligning himself with the law. On Friday, the email arrived that shook the aggressor's world. Mark Whitman, a business owner from Porter Square, was notified to appear for questioning based on evidence of discrimination and threat. The message cited the case number, attached the video link, and stated that other witnesses would be subpoenaed. The fear that had previously been directed at Camilla now had the correct recipient. The neighborhood felt it. At the cafe on Mass Ave, 2 attendants whispered upon seeing Camilla in line. "It's her." One adjusted her apron and asked sincerely, "Would you like some water while you wait?" It wasn't charity. It was recognition. On the bus, the blonde girl gave her a guilty sideways glance and after a few seconds whispered a "sorry" that the engine noise swallowed. Camilla didn't respond. She didn't need to. Damon, for his part, received a call from the police to confirm the time and location of the recording. He also sent the sworn statement, with the serenity of someone finally finding a purpose for their indignation. "Thank you for doing something," Camilla wrote in 2 lines. He replied with an emoji and a "always." When the day of the testimony came, Mark sat before the investigator with trembling hands. He tried to reconstruct himself as a victim of the heat of the moment. The screen showed the bus aisle, the clear words, the complicit faces. His justifications shattered like glass. In the end, they advised him not to contact the victim and to attend the administrative hearing. He left smaller. The news didn't make headlines, but it spread like air, discreet, precise. Some clients stepped away from Mark's store. A supplier postponed deliveries. Neighbors who once laughed loudly now greeted with their chins lowered. Public shame didn't turn into a shout. It became routine. On a rainy afternoon, Camilla boarded the bus on Commonwealth Avenue towards Alston. She chose the same seat, rested the folder on her lap, and watched the drops slide down the glass. No one said anything. A student offered the seat without paternalism. Walter, in the rearview mirror, met her gaze and nodded. It wasn't friendship. It was a code. She thought of her mother in El Paso, who would ask on the phone, "Was it worth it?" She thought of her father, who would say the world changes 1 inch at a time. She thought of herself, not as an emblem, but as a person who took the bus and wanted to get home without being hurt. Her phone vibrated. Email from the commission. Complaint received. We will proceed with investigation and mandatory mediation. We will inform you of the next steps. Camilla breathed, wide and silent, as if returning her body to her own body. When the bus crossed the Massachusetts Avenue Bridge, the sky opened a pale crack. The city remained rough, but it had taken a step back. Camilla closed the leather folder, tied her hair, and gazed at the Charles River. There was no audience, no speech, no negotiated forgiveness. There was consequence. When she got off, she felt that the concrete was in the same place as always, but the hierarchy of the street had changed. She walked between storefronts, the distant sound of sirens mixed with a saxophone in Harvard Square. She passed Porter, saw Mark's store with the door ajar and a closed for inventory sign. She didn't smile. She kept walking. The victory she carried didn't weigh in her hand. It lived in the way people made space in the aisle, in the care they took in choosing words, in the certainty that the video existed, even when it wasn't in sight. It was simple and radical. The right spoken in a low voice, the body in the right place, the undeniable dignity. In the final curve, the 66 reappeared, stirring up wind. Camilla hooked the strap of her folder on her shoulder and continued. The country wasn't a gift to be granted by background voices. It was home, and, like any home, it required a key, proof, and firmness. She had all three. And you? Have you witnessed or experienced a situation of discrimination like this? Share it in the comments. Your voice matters too. If this story moved you, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. That way, you won't miss the next stories that expose truths many try to hide. Click now on the next video playing on your screen. See you there.